Almost 4 decades ago, a new phenomenon began to take its grip on the youth all over the world. The streets made their own legacies, and while a few became household names, there were many who were more in the background doing what they loved and just happy being involved in a movement that would someday shape the world. I have 2 special individuals here today who have an unwavering passion for everything that is hip-hop, and although they have not had the huge success of those household names, their love for the hip-hop culture has never once dwindled. MC, DJ, record label, independent business owners, and all of that while holding down a family life. It's with great pleasure that I introduce to the 521 Sofa Chat, Specifik and Whirlwind D.
Good to be here. Good to be here.
Absolute pleasure.
Yeah. What keeps you guys going? Because it's been like nearly 4 decades.
Yeah, I know.
You know, what was it about hip hop that caught your attention?
For me, it gave me a focus and gave me a goal and it gave me a community that was outside of this, outside of the usual organised parents groups and clubs and things that you do. It was a group of guys that just wanted to hang around the streets and be creative and and also be competitive because that was the key for me.
Nothing like knowing you're just taking everybody out, isn't it?
Well, for me, it's always been about battling. Always about battling.
Yeah, I mean, it's a similar sort of way. I mean, I've always been passionate about music right from day dot. And then I think, when hip-hop, electro, when Street Sounds albums, the early films, came along, Beat Street, all that kind of stuff, it just grabbed me, and it's never let go, to be honest. And,
so where you said music, you've always been into music. I mean, was it like hip-hop was what got you, or were
no,
you
I mean, it was crazy. I was saying to Simon in the car, actually, years ago, I remember winning like a 7-inch single. I think it was Wild Cherry, Play That Funky Music, at a fair, when you throw the dart in the card. And that was the first record I ever, and I was a youngster then. I had this really old-fashioned record player where you put things and the records dropped.
Oh yeah.
And I was buying all kinds of stuff. And then it was Adam and the Ants. And then all of a sudden, come 82, 83, hip-hop just grabbed me. So I kind of had that music was something I knew I loved. And then when I found hip-hop, I knew I'd really found my passion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, I was sort of, my neighbour was a few years older than me and introduced me to punk. And I thought that was all right, but it didn't really float my boat music-wise. Adam and the Ants is probably the first thing I remember that I was like, I quite like this.
So it wasn't just the fact that like punk music was rebellion music and hip hop was rebellion music. So it wasn't about what it stood for. It was more the sound.
It was
sonically.
more the sound, more sonically, I think. And I think
sonically and visually, actually.
Yeah.
When you look at the b-boying and the colours on those Street Sounds albums, it was just it grabbed you.
Was that your introduction?
The very first hip hop record I heard, although I didn't know what it was at the time, was Planet Rock when it was first released. I suppose until Buffalo Girls, I want to say. Maybe Buffalo Girls. And Buffalo Girls came out, and then that was really the big kickoff point. And interestingly, I went to a school that...
interestingly, I think we all went to a school.
No, but...
he was the only one in his neighbourhood.
But you put the full stop in the wrong place. You put the full stop in the wrong place.
I actually went to the school.
Okay.
Well, a lot of people didn't. And they piloted this new idea, which was to try and engage the kids by doing things that they wanted to do. So in music, we were learning how to scratch, and we would study Micall Parknsun. So and we would watch that video and then try and replicate it on this little turntable, and then we'd go off into other rooms and write raps and come back and recite them, and also pause button mixtapes, which is
everybody did that, didn't they?
Yeah, and that was part of the curriculum at the time. Well, that's all we used to do. Go to school, we'd talk about it straight away. Lunchtime, we'd be breaking in the hall. That would just consume our whole lives, and probably has ever since.
What was the next stage for you?
For me, it was sort of you finding your feet in the culture and understanding what you felt was, how it all came together. What graph, b-boy, and then the music, or how it was delivered to us as such. And then it was probably after a few months, maybe not even that, of practicing breaking, we sort of formed a crew. And I was introduced into a crew of older guys. It was called the Crazy Style Crew. Okay. And we used to on Saturdays meet up in the precinct and practice and battle, and it was that time, and this was obviously not unique to our area. This was going on everywhere, and it was We'd go off to other towns, and other towns would come to our town, and you would find the breakers in the town, and you'd battle them. We went on a school trip to France, and I remember walking around this campsite, and there was a school disco going on, and I sort of looked through the door, and there was and I knocked on the door, and these guys, these French guys, opened the door. I thought, right, we'll have a battle here. And I said to these guys, do you want to burn? Because we used to call it, do you want to burn? Right? And these guys were like sort of talking to each other, going, yeah, okay. And all of a sudden they came outside, and they all thought we wanted scraps. I was like, no, we want to break that. They thought we were going to have a scrap.
Oh, mate, the number of stories I've heard about things like that, like people weren't really fisting back in the days. No. You know what I mean? When I say fisting, I'm not talking sexual ties.
Well, I know this channel's going.
Hang on a minute.
I'm talking about, just spudding, basically.
Spudding.
Yeah,
that sounds even worse.
One of my friends was with me. We were going to the post office, and I see one of my other friends who's an MC come over, and he's seen me, and he's seen my friend, and I've introduced him, and he's going, safe. My guy's got his jacket off, and he's all getting ready to fight. Like, I'll show you safe. You know what I mean? I'm not even joking. It actually happened. Yeah. And I had to explain to him, no, that's a sign of respect.
Yeah.
Spud.
Totally.
But anyway, when was it that you realised that a movement was going on? That this was special. That this was different.
I do have a defining moment, and we were just breaking for breaking's sake at the beginning, and the music was a part of that kind of back. Like Graph was the backdrop, the music was the soundtrack. So I remember listening to West Street Mob, I Can't Stop, right? Yeah. And I was breaking, and that was I've got goosebumps even thinking about it. That was the first time I connected what I was doing to the music. So I was like breaking to that music, and it felt like I was then connected to it, if you know what I mean.
Because for a lot of people, I think Buffalo Girls probably was the turning point.
Yeah, loved all the imagery. I just didn't make sense of the music, and it probably. I remember seeing Sucker MCs. I think they were on this TV program, and I was like, yeah, this is it. This is what it should be. This is what it should be, and
But it's mad though, because back then, that was like, this is it, like you said.
Yeah.
But then a few years later, Rakim comes along, and it's just like, you look at one, it's like the nursery rhymers.
Yeah.
You see, that's what I love about hip hop, and in a way, to answer your question in terms of the music, for me, I think what grabbed me about hip hop, and it's, I would say it's right the way through the life of the music, is it's dynamic and it changes all the time. So you listen to a record like Step Off, and then a year or two later you've got Eric B as president, and then you hit the late 80s and you've got records like Set It Off, and it's just constantly morphing and changing. And for me, there wasn't a music form that did that. And so I was just so engaged, and I'd listen to Micall and later Westwood, and I was glued to it, and it just inspired me. And for me, in answer to your question, it kind of became the soundtrack of my life, and that's, I think, what grabbed me. And I was in the record room with my daughter only yesterday, actually pulling out some records, and she was asking me about them, and I was saying, oh, this record was I can pull out a record and it's a memory.
You can remember exactly where you were.
And it's
like the moon landing, innit?
Yeah, absolutely.
You probably remember where you bought every record. Why you bought every record, because there was that nostalgia thing attached to it. But what you were saying about like the scene morphing into different sections and whatever, do you not feel that at some point it became damaging?
I kind of like the way it's just morphed, and I'm talking about the music specifically here, but I love the way it's gone off in different directions and then you can pick and choose. And you can pick and choose. Absolutely.
We were saying I was saying in the car earlier on that it's interesting how the Street Sounds Electro series kind of gave us this rounded image of what it should be, but actually probably wasn't what it is. That wasn't definitive hip hop as far as America was concerned, but this was, we bought the record and thought, this is what the soundtrack is. And what I like about that in some ways is the different styles of music that was featured on the electro albums. I definitely think inspired the next generations to go off in different directions. So you had people that were clearly into rap, but people who were into electro started then to go into different types of dance music and whatever. I mean, I think the Street Sounds series is definitely responsible for a lot of the evolution of British computer-based music.
That's one of the differences we had in this country as well, that we got a little bit of everything, which meant you got all these different genres and subgenres forming.
And we learned a lot from that.
Definitely.
So that was great. I wanted to touch on the reasons why you decided to go and do your own thing, and
I never even thought about a record deal, if I'm honest. I never even considered that was a thing that could happen, or even if it was something I wanted to do. I mean, there's lots of goals that I wanted to have initially. The name on a flyer. Needed to get some pieces up on the wall. Wanted photographs of those. I wanted to record my own stuff, but I wasn't overly worried about getting a record deal. And I've got to credit you for this. Really, is I think your model of being independent really showed me and other people that you can actually, you don't need to go knocking on people's doors. You can do this yourself. And I think that hip hop has been a very it's always been about people doing things for themselves.
Absolutely.
And I think people have always you didn't need money to go and to be involved in hip hop, really. So I think it kind of from what you did inspired me and other people to think, do you know what, we'll do this ourselves. We don't need to be told by a record label what we should or shouldn't do.
I mean, I would kind of agree with that, although what was interesting, I had slightly different motivations, and I have to admit, because I'd loved records, so I was desperate for years to have a record. And in the sort of late 80s, I thought I was getting okay at my craft. I'd spent some time working with a young Cold Sweat and Angelo Starr. Never released anything in the end, but we did do some tracks, and also Lap One Productions, which was Longsy D and Pinky. So I was doing some projects with them. But then sometime in '89, I met Johnny F just through a link, and just through a friend. And,
obviously, for anyone who doesn't know who Johnny F is, do you want to just quickly explain?
Yes, so Johnny F. Johnny F. formed Liberty Grooves. There was a record label. There was a shop. He was a passionate hip hop head in there right from the start. Put his life and soul into hip hop, really, and was in the 90s was quite well known on the scene. So Johnny F and I met around '89, I think it was, and I already had these things going on. I'd answered like adverts in Echoes, like looking for a rapper, and that's how I ended up with Cold Sweat, going down to the basement and doing them. But these things were all quite slow, and it might have been that, I mean, I think I had a slight disadvantage because but the guy I was working with before was a beatbox. I didn't have any way of making music. I was just an MC. And then what happened was Johnny F and I met. He had this idea for starting his record label, Liberty Grooves. We started doing some tracks together. And then one day Johnny said, look, let's make a record. And very much inspired by the likes of yourselves. There were a few artists who were dropping white labels. No one quite did it the way you did it, and that was just phenomenal. The whole kind of selling on a street corner, the little notes in the record, incredible. But we were very much inspired by that and decided, okay, let's do our own thing. So we released our first record. It was very much led and spearheaded by Johnny. I'd always say it was Johnny F's label, but that record. But
you were very instrumental in the start.
Definitely in the early days, because that record was the start of Liberty Grooves, and we just hang out in his bedroom. We even had a Liberty Grooves doorbell on his parents' house, and things were going a bit slowly. So what can we do? Let's release our own record. And that's where it came from.
Whatever you guys were doing, it was
a real meeting spot, and it was incredible. The amount of people I got to freestyle with and rhyme with, everyone from Big Ted, Principal Mark, loads of people would drop in. The only problem, this is probably why the shop shut eventually, is no one bought records. They just hung out. Hung out.
Yeah, I heard about that too.
But that was record shops, wasn't it?
But you were selling the records. You might not be selling the records that you were selling in the shop, but as a label, you started picking up.
So the records sold as a label. I mean, it's the runs were a lot bigger back then. But we kind of, with the way Johnny F did it, is he kind of almost with each release did something different. So we did True Style next, which I was very much involved with, and then he had his album with KLM. Shop opened, and then he started, getting his records made in America, with Gut Snipes and all that kind of stuff.
Me being into hip hop, I dabbled in everything. What side really caught you, and why?
Well, while you're thinking, so mine's easy because it was the MCing.
Yeah.
You know, I just there's something about that. You know, some of those early MC people like Melly Mel, you know, and then Rakim later on. I just loved their finesse. I guess like every kid, I'd done the old deodorant bottle in front of a mirror, and so and probably actually I was never any good at dancing. My graph was about as far as tracing out a subway art. So that was the one. So it was the MCing that grabbed me, and I just went headlong into that.
Yeah, well, for me, it kind of it followed the progression really. I kicked off with breaking, which then got me interested in the graph and also the music. So we sort of went from breaking into doing graph, and the graph never went away. From that as well, also just messing around on the turntable, trying to recreate the sounds I was hearing. So grabbing my dad's records, abusing his turntable, breaking his needle, and then just coming up with some different, my own sounds and trying to record my own things. And I suppose I was always, as soon as I heard scratching, I was like, oh, this is for me.
What's your favourite aspect of hip hop?
The music, absolutely,
yeah.
I've got a healthy respect for all of it, but definitely the music.
I think it has to be graffiti.
Okay.
It really does.
And what is it about that?
I don't know. Ever since the very first day that I saw it, I've been completely mesmerised by it every single day from that point onwards. Where I'm writing a book at the moment about graffiti, and I've spent my whole life looking for it, going to cities just to find it, just to take photographs.
Brilliant.
I've just been obsessed by it. The whole time, ever since I first saw it. Yeah. And I remember driving into Bristol as a young kiddie. Well, not, I wasn't driving. I was on the school bus, and I used to see this free DDD. It was basically DDD, which was 3D from Bristol. Yeah. And you had this tag up on the side. And back then, you know, there weren't many tags around at all. So this thing stood out like a sore thumb. It was up on the wall, DDD, and it was DDD, and it was just obsessive behaviour, which I think most graffiti writers will probably say the same thing. It's a very obsessive culture. I always like the mystery with graph as well, because you never knew who did it. Also, I'm trying to sort of look at the different links between different areas in the country and how their styles developed and what influenced them for their particular styles, and it's really interesting.
So what was your favourite style?
For me, it's always been about angles and shapes, and I suppose if you look at Style Wars Revisited, where Doze talks about the arrow and the fact and b-boy and having a shape, and I've always felt that the graph has got a shape and a style that kind of sits perfectly with breaking, and again the technicalities of DJing and so on.
So you prefer the lettering more than the characterizations?
Yeah, 100%. I'm straight up letters. Back in the day, the way I saw it, you had your graffiti writer, and you had your token guy that did a character. So your character sat with the graph. Yeah. In my opinion, you did your piece and you had the character. The character for me wasn't the main focus. Yeah. It was always about the letters, and it was a bit of a token gesture to the art. Yeah.
So, what groups have you been in before? I mean, I know you were in Solid in Mind.
That's right. Yeah. So I was Solid in Mind, Johnny F and I, and that was our early hip hop band in the early 90s, and then. Really, when I started making music again around about 2009, I guess I've been, for want of a better word, a solo artist. But I mean, I say that every record I make it's a team effort. It's huge. And, you know, it's a lot of the time it's yourself, Djar One, Mr. Fantastic. There's a group of people. Yeah. But then there are a few other crews. So we did a record recently under the name of All Stars, and that was myself, Simon, Chrome,
I missed that one.
DSK,
I missed that one.
Mr. Wonderful.
Juice Crew.
It was a play on Juice Crew Law. Play on Juice Crew Law.
Oh, that one.
With the video with all the b-boying, and it was paying homage to the I keep mixing up Hong Kong or China b-boy crew.
Yeah, but they're called the Juice Crew.
Yeah, and who are called the Juice Crew, and that's in a way what spawned that record, and so we were part of that. Part of a crew called the Double Agents, another recent one.
Can I stop you for a second?
Yeah.
Right. You know when you go to the cinema right? And you see like a guy sitting in the cinema with his girlfriend, and he's slowly trying to put his arm around. That's what that's beginning to look like.
Is it? He's like that.
So
he's
yeah,
like that.
maybe that's the reason why you're slowly sliding
Is
that
that
way.
Wow,
just
you
see
I was about to put my hand on your leg and I saw you. I thought, no.
Before we go any further, I mean, should we talk about these?
Yes.
Oh Jesus!
Yeah,
You're going to be stuck in that position now.
Yeah, basically, before we started the interview, they decided they wanted to see me wearing the fish slippers, so I had to wear them. All right,
Cruise.
so
Simon.
yeah, cruise.
So my very first crew was the breaking crew, and that was Crazy Style crew.
Okay.
And then from that point onwards, when I first moved to Exeter area, and I met up with Project C.
Yeah. Do you want to tell people who Project C is?
Yeah, Project C's he's a rapper. He writes books.
And what was it?
And he was in a crew called Death Defiance.
There you go.
But I was going to come on to that because the way that sort of the journey is.
So my interjection was a bit premature.
Little
okay,
bit,
shut
yeah.
up, Blade.
Yeah.
Shut up, Blade.
So before Death Defiance, there was a group called IBP, which was the Ill Beat Posse.
And that's you wearing.
And when I met Adam at school in 1987, he asked me to be in Ill Beat Posse, which was with Roller Rock and a couple of other guys. And that kind of was just nothing materialised from my point of view. I went off to do skateboarding really from that point onwards. And those guys then went off to university and became Death Defiance. And at that point I was primarily a fan, I would say. And then a few years later I was then working with Shah, who was a part of Death Defiance, and we were in a crew called Twisted Illusions, and then I joined forces with Adam. We were Specifik and Project C, which was probably my first real success, I think, in terms of as a hip hop group. And we went out early O's doing lots of gigs all around the place. We were all around the country.
So when you joined up with Whirlwind to do your projects, did you and Adam have any lovers' tiff going on?
No. You know how things take their natural course, don't they? And we had a number of tracks, and we did loads of gigs, and our lives were sort of going in different directions. I did a few cut and paste records. He went off to do something else, and we ended up doing another project together, which was called The Projections. That was another album we did a few years later. So we kind of just morphed into different things. Where it's that relationship started off by me as a producer, and then him jumping on as a rapper, and then we worked as a group. And then he went off and did more as him as a rapper, and I sort of carried on as a producer, but we still worked together. And then that sort of just is carried on. That relationship's carried on ever since.
You make records as a solo artist, I make records as a solo artist, but we tend to, where we get grouped together, we tend to perform together.
I was going to ask about that, because like to a lot of people that I speak to, they see you as a group. But do you want to clarify your working relationship?
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, as a DJ and somebody that's involved with the label, there's a lot of really good artists that don't necessarily have a DJ. It's been a natural progression to work together, probably similar as you and other DJs you've had in the past.
Yeah, it has kind of naturally happened, hasn't it, over time?
Where alongside that, I would jump out as well and do stuff with other artists. And so I've got multiple projects on the go at any given time, but so it's I'm not exclusively yours, am I?
No, but that's why I've got the arm round you. I'm trying to usher you. But no, you're very much. I mean, you've got a huge web of people that you work with, definitely.
Sluts, DJ sluts. Yeah.
How did your relationship form in the beginning? I mean, was it you reached out to him and said, I need an MC? What happened?
When BLine,
and then at what point did you also realize that, this is a guy I want to carry on working with?
Yeah.
And
I can't get rid of him.
Okay,
that's the problem.
It's like one of those bogies you flick and it just keeps sticking to your finger. Can't get rid of it.
Hang on. So I think what happened was when BLine kicked off. I did the first single was with Adam, Project C, and Chrome, and that was with a guy called Martin Finch, Agent Finch.
Yeah.
And he already knew Dudley, was already trying to extract from him as many test pressings and promo photos as he possibly could get. And he said, let's do a track with this rapper from the New Forest called Whirlwind D. And I'm like, yeah, okay, well, I'll take it on your recommendation, obviously. And I did a beat. Mm-hmm. He did a rap. Mr. Thing did the cuts. And
Broadway was born.
And then from that point, because I was still doing a few different shows, every now and then an opportunity would come up and someone would say, oh, do you know, who do you think we should get down? And I said, well, just get Whirlwind down. And the first gig we did was with the 4 Hours, was it?
I think it was the Verb T one. Verb T, yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, we warmed up, and I was like, okay, this could work, and then we sort of rolled it out.
It just kind of happened, didn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, mentioned the Finch connection. Because I sort of started making records again around about 2009, because what had happened is I'd had some records that I didn't release back in the day. I really regretted not releasing. That one of them, Johnny F and I had, and it was ready to go. But it never happened. You know, he moved on with the label. I was doing my own thing. And I always had that like itch that I wanted to scratch. And then what happened was, I think, you know, the vinyl revolution was starting again. People were releasing unreleased stuff. And Arrow put this track Centre Stage on the Crown Jewels. Yeah. And on the back of that, I got a load of people I didn't know were like phoning me up, messaging me, going, oh, I love that track, you know. And I was like, man, we should release this. So I phoned up Johnny, because we're still in touch, and I said, look, would you mind if I restarted your label as like a one-off? And actually, he gave me his blessing, because he liked the track we'd done. I think he kind of felt, we both felt we should have released it at the time, we didn't. So we released that record. They flew. It was that time when people were buying like 5 copies of everything. And very quickly did a follow-up called Battle Tip Rhyme, which was our final unreleased track we hadn't done. And through the forums, I got to know Finchy. And then Finchy sort of, you know, mentioned him to yourself. And of course, geographically, we were close. And in all honesty, after I did Battle Tip Rhyme, I kind of thought, because all those were old tracks, you know, it wasn't like I was writing something new. And I thought, that's it, I'm going to stop. In fact, my wife always says this to me. I said, that's it, I promise this is the last record. And then of course, I met Simon. Bless her, she's incredible. But, you know, she sometimes calls Simon the sort of second wife, because we're on the phone. Actually, this whole thing, we have our daily hip-hop phone call, don't we?
We do.
But it's strictly platonic.
So he's pitching it.
Can I just say, you say strictly platonic, but your arms say something different.
That's just the angle I'm sat. You know, you've got to get that natural.
Yeah, you try convincing the world. We got it all on camera, and that's not what we're seeing, bro.
I've always had my doubts about him.
All right. So you're a producer.
Yeah.
You're a DJ. You dabble in breaking still, I guess.
No.
Okay, the knees have given way. But you definitely dabble in graffiti.
Yeah.
And
there's not a lot I don't dabble in, to be honest.
But you're also like entrepreneurial as well with everything you do. Like, you know, you've got your own business that you run. Both of you have. I believe you have as well, haven't you?
Well, actually, no, I work in my sensible jobs in the public sector in the world of teaching.
Okay, so you have your own business. But, you know, BLine Recordings. How do you fit time in to do BLine Recordings? And do you want to explain to people what BLine Recordings is actually about?
He doesn't sleep.
And actually, it wasn't me that started it. It was a guy called Dan the Fish and another guy called Darren. They did a radio show in Gloucester, which was called the BLine Radio Show. And they wanted to take that radio show a bit further, and they wanted to put out a record. So they put out this record on BLine Recordings, which was with Sabine's OBE. And
wicked guy, need to get him.
Absolutely, big up Steve.
And I've known Dan from Dan used to promote clubs in Gloucester, so we used to go and regularly play up there. And he said, you know, are you working on any music? And I said, yeah, I've got a few things. And he said, I'd love to put it out on the label. I said, great. So gave him the music, and he said he went to the other guys and said, you know, do you want to put this out? And these guys were like, oh, I thought we were just going to do one record. So I then joined forces, invested with Dan, put the record out. Similar story to Dudley, sold out within a week, and I thought, okay, we can do this. We can do this again. So I thought, you know, the days of making records were done for me. And then obviously 2012, 13, I realised that wasn't the case at all. Because I think what was happening with social media everybody who was out in the hip hop scene had eventually sort of all found each other. So there was a good little community going on. So when we released the records, everyone was focused. Obviously there was records coming out and they were buying them, and if you notice from that point the scene again starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger, more and more labels, more and more people think, oh, we can put our own music, and it gets bigger. As it is now, it's massive again. So
what do you consider massive? Because back in our days, massive was, our first run on a record was 15,000-20,000 copies.
Nothing like that.
It's totally changed.
When I say massive,
and we're talking, that was underground.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
When I say massive, I think, when I go back to 2010, 11, 12, you could count the amount of releases on your hand. It was really minimal. If you look at it now, it's a huge amount of records that you can buy every day of the week. I mean, I can't even keep up anymore. There was a time you could buy everything, and now you can't. It's too much.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And then going back to what I said about like doubles, that kind of around 2008-9, we had people like Diggers with Gratitude, those sort of people. They were putting records out, and people are buying like 4 or 5 copies. And then now those days have kind of gone now. But what has happened, of course, is lots and lots of people have moved into that market, and it's really interesting how it's grown over time.
So what does BLine Recordings mean to you?
Well, BLine Recordings has always been a platform for me to put out not only myself, but the other people I feel within the scene, people that are being actively creative that don't have a platform. So it's given them a platform and a physical release that we can just do what we enjoy doing, which is making good quality hip hop and putting it on wax. Okay. So that was the goal. That's what we went out to achieve, and we've achieved that and then some. And what BLine really stood for wasn't just it wasn't a business to make money. It's a label that encompasses hip hop as a culture.
How have you guys kept the passion alive for so long? Because like guys like me, there was points where we had enough. I mean, I've retired like 2 or 3 times. You know what I mean? And as much as I love it, sometimes I retire because I love it. Because I just felt like the reasons I got into it were not there no more. So how have you guys kept the passion alive for so long?
For me, it's that so since 2013, when we started performing together, and obviously Simon's done loads of other things as well, but I'm thinking of what we do together. I think it's almost been like we've had goals. We set ourselves goals. So for example, we really wanted, so in 2015 we supported Wu-Tang Clan and Public Enemy, but both incredible bands. But I mean, PE, for me, they are the holy grail, and to support them and hang out with Chuck D and chat to David DMX beforehand, and then to jump on stage with 2,000 people and to have them all chanting BLine, and Simon's cutting the music out, and I'm going BLine, and they go BLine, and so things like that have, it's almost like we've had these little goals, and you tick that one off, and then there's another goal, and it's I think we both got quite a drive like that we want to hit this, and then a couple of years ago, we've had our music now played on 6 Music, and that was another tick, and it's not like we're collecting them, but it's just those things drive you, I think, and because they're kind of fresh experiences, they keep you going, and you think, well, where can we go next?
But your livelihood is still your businesses and your jobs. So this is what I'm saying. It's like, you're still driven to carry on making the music, even though it's not buying your mansions and Lamborghinis.
I just love it. I just love the culture. It's been with us for so long, hasn't it?
Yeah, but the thing is with it, from day one, hip hop has never paid a wage to me. I mean, it's paid for us to do the things we wanted to do, and it's continued to kind of cover itself in terms of money,
I would agree with that.
But so I've never had any more expectations out of it. Therefore, my passion for it has never been controlled by the financial side of it. Yeah, if you know what I mean. So it's always been the hobby, if that makes sense. Yeah. So my passion, my love for it has never changed, because I've never been driven by money.
Yeah. I mean, when we all started, it wasn't about the money, but as time went on, we started having children, and suddenly it's like, you want to be able to convert your hobby into a career.
I've tried to do music full time, and I found that it was quite a for me, it wasn't the path that I wanted to go down. I needed some stability. I found that I wasn't looking after myself as well as I should be by doing music.
Well, sounds like you're not doing it now either with your 22 hours of no sleep.
Yeah, but that's always been me. I always work, and like I say, very goal focused. So
okay, so can I ask you a question with regards to that? So how the F do you manage to not get bags under your eyes like me? Because I can go shopping with these bags.
Well, I've got a story.
Okay.
So a number of years ago, the HMS Napoli was stranded outside of a place called Branksome down in Devon.
Okay.
And it toppled, and a lot of the container ships, they came to shore, and all this stuff was on the beach. So people were going down there picking up BMW car parts, motorbikes, and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, I've got to get a bit of this action. So I managed to get out of work, right, and head down to the beach. And I had to sort of dodge the police because they had roadblocks up, and almost swim round. Got round there, and there's people on the beach. Like, yes. Started digging, and what did I come across? L'Oreal face cream. And I had about 5 years worth of L'Oreal face cream.
Still using it.
So yeah, and
I'll tell you the other thing with this man. The other thing with this man, when we go away and do a gig, you have this ability. We'll come back and we'll get back to the hotel like 3 o'clock, and I'm thinking we've got to leave really early. You literally put your head on the pillow, bang, you're asleep. And then he's up at 6 a.m. going for a jog. Whereas I can't, and I think that's it. You can just go donk.
I have an on and off switch.
But,
well, it's funny because I'm always very jealous of that ability. Because when we've the last couple of years we've been out to Germany a few times and France, and when you go out there, of course, if you're going to Germany, you're doing a few gigs back to back, and I'm always like fired up for the first one. I'm thinking, how am I going to get enough sleep to be fresh for the second one? And I'm like kipping wherever I can, drinking honey and lemon, and
meditating.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, when we going painting?
Yeah, you are.
When we going record shops?
I want to stay in bed.
I'm on it. I'm on it.
So guys, is there anything you want to promote?
Yeah, I'll get stuck in first. So I've got a single coming out in May with DJ Destruction. So we've done a cut and paste record together. That's coming out in, I say together, I'm on one side, he's on the other side, so you guys can decide which is the best.
Yeah.
And so I'm working on a third LP, which I'm hoping to have complete this year. And there is one thing I want to talk about which I'm working on, because it will help me getting it done. So this is more for my benefit. I'm working on a project called Styles and Origin, Graffiti in the South. And it's mainly my journey where I started off living in Bristol, moved to Exeter, then moved to Bournemouth. But on my journey, I've always taken photographs of graph, have done since the 80s. So I've got this huge amount of photographs that I've taken. And what I wanted to do is just do something with them and document what that journey was about. And I'm interviewing lots of people who have been involved in the scene in the South over those decades, and just getting a bit of a background about where they felt they got their style and influence from, and connecting the dots. So yeah, that's something I'm working on.
Perfect. Before you go into your thing, do you want to just tell people how when we first met and about the panda eyes?
So well, so when I first met Blade was probably, I think it was 1990, a place called the Lemon Grove in Exeter, and this hooligan turned up some guys from London turned up, big black eye. I know he had
it was the panda
two black eyes, yeah. Got up on stage, beatbox, stole the whole show, and everybody in Devon was a big fan from that point onwards. It's fair to say.
Do you know the reason? Do you know the story behind the panda eyes?
No, I don't.
Okay, basically what happened is a couple of days before, I was in my flat and I was groping the missus, and she punched me in the face and broke my nose. So when you break your nose, what happens is they just flare up on both sides. Yeah. So both the eyes were there, but they were all black, and so I had panda eyes. Yeah, there you go.
But as a kid in the crowd watching what's going on, it's quite a strong visual statement. Yeah, this guy gets on stage, these guys from London, a bit older, black eyes, and you think, flipping heck,
Oh, dude.
this is hip hop.
There you go. Is hip hop in it? Anything you would like to promote?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a few collaborations going, but I'll mention I've got a forthcoming single on BLine Recordings. In fact, it went to press yesterday.
Perfect.
And it's a double A-sider, so we've got a track produced by Djar One with Micall Parknsun, and then on the flip, we got a tasty little remix by Smoove, and of course my man Specifik is on both the tracks as well. So I reckon that'll be dropping around about June, July, because I know there's major delays at all the pressing plants at the moment.
Okay.
So,
guys, it's been a pleasure having you on here. If we could do this again at some point when you've got new material.
Yeah.
But at the same time, don't forget, I would love to get you in here on the turntables to do some turntables.
We can do that. We could definitely do that.
Yeah, it's got to happen.
100%.
100%. Wicked.
Let's keep talking and make some plans.
Well, let's not talk. Let's just make it happen.
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
Too many people talk in it and nothing
Yeah,
happens.
that's true. That's
So
true.
let's just make it happen.
Talkers and doers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. If you want to know more about what these guys have been doing all these years and what they're doing now, please follow them on their connection pages. All the relevant links that you need can be found in the description below. Comment, like, share. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and click on the bell to receive the notifications. Until next time, enjoy your newfound freedom and we'll see you soon. Thank you for watching.